Welcome to the Marshall Pruett podcast and our Week in IndyCar show, brought to you by Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, our dear friends at TorontoMotorsports.com, and also Bell Racing Helmets USA. Guest this week, Meyer Shank Racing's Jack Harvey. Man, I felt bad for Jack. Was on the way. Definitely had the potential for a really strong result in Portland. Great Firestone Fast 6 qualifying for him. And then, yeah. So have a little bit of fun with Jack at the start of our interview there. Tons of great questions as usual that you have sent in. Then we close with Toby Sowery, who won his very first Indy Lights race last weekend with the HMD/Pelfrey team. Good stuff with Toby as well, who rang in from the UK. If this is your first time listening to our show, we use the Marshall Pruett Podcast Facebook page to get your questions coming in. We also ask for them on Twitter from my @MarshallPruett account. And also great to have our pals at the Reddit IndyCar group back involved again. So all manner of questions coming in on those three social media platforms. Every episode we have recorded, that is 600 plus, not only Week in IndyCars, Week in Sports Cars, in-depth features, audio, race car audio, ambient and in-car, all manner of things, all housed on MarshallPruettPodcast.com. All manner of ways to subscribe as well, which I seem to forget to tell folks on a regular basis because, well, kind of simple like that at times. So what we're going to do this week, because the amount of questions coming in after Portland, which was rather insane. Oh, there's a lot of questions. More than 120. Some of those from my guests, a lot more from me. So as we have started to get into the practice of, instead of attaching your Q&A to the end of the show with my guests, there's no way we could do that without it just destroying everybody's data plans. So what I've done recent weeks, I have split your Q&A into a separate episode. There are enough questions this week where I need to split the Q&A into separate episodes. So, yeah, there's actually three parts to this week's Week in IndyCar. So here we have our man, Jack Harvey and Toby Sowery. Then we move into part one of your Q&A, and then there's a part two. And you all sent in, as I said, great stuff. Some of it funny, some of it really pointed at some of the bad actors in recent weeks in IndyCar. Great questions as well, some technical in nature. Some of you wanting to know why the restart took so long to get going after the first lap, first turn crash, why the cars were reordered and shuffled. Race director Kyle Novak from IndyCar was kind enough to send a really detailed explanation that I read here. I think that might be in the second part of the Q&A, but lots of great stuff from y'all, so really appreciate the time you spent here. Also, at the beginning of the Q&A, the first part, give you some deeper dives on my thoughts about the Portland weekend, some of those that tie into some of your questions too. So not going to have a lot for you here up at front. The beginning of what we have here for the first of our three-stage Week in IndyCar. Just mention a couple things that I haven't necessarily addressed in the other ones. That was definitely wanted to start here with a huge thanks to all of you who turned out for our live podcast Saturday evening in Portland. It's easily the biggest turnout to date. It was all courtesy of you, of our great, great partners, great friends at Cooper Tires, making the Cooper Tire stage available to us. Also to the Portland Grand Prix. The fine folks who put on the event were partners in making this happen. Had 4 guests lined up and announced: Dario Franchitti, Simon Pagino, Tony Kanaan, and the wild man himself, Robbie Gordon. And as usual, as I like to do, we have some surprise guests, those being Sebastian Bourdais, who came in. That was a lot of fun. Mike Shank came in, actually spent the whole time there. And then also track manager E.C. Mueller. So ended up having 7 guests for you. We'll get the audio going here from that soon. Also have some video from the event. So of the many things I need to get going on here shortly. But thanks again to everyone. It was great. Gave out a lot of swag as well. Some hats, T-shirts from the Meyer Shank team. A lot of stickers and keychains and, I don't know, all kinds of great stuff. Huge thanks to Derek Koska from TorontoMotorsports.com, who printed off a bunch of stickers, gave out a ton. Just really awesome to not only have partners, all that I've mentioned, the fact that whether it's Cooper Tires, making the stage available, really wanting to make this an immersive thing, welcoming everyone up onto stage to get autographs, to take selfies, to do whatever. They really are all about the get up close, be really, really involved with what we're doing. Derek as well, who was in the crowd, one of our show partners here, is in the crowd just giving stuff away, trying to create more love. Justice Brothers, huge as well, giving us plenty of support and swag to share with you. And the crazy folks at Bell Helmets, they're just always doing great things for us. So anyways, just really happy to see all these things really on display, right? Not just mentioning names during this podcast here, but actually seeing these folks in person, trying to engage with y'all. So really happy about that. Speaking of love, in another format, just walking throughout Portland, truly could not keep count of the amount of people who stopped and either said, MP, it's great to have you back. Been gone for 3 months. Great to have you back. I'm guessing 150 to 200 people, if not more, stopped to ask about my wife, Chabrel, how she is doing. It was just, yeah. I didn't have much in the way of emotion left. I'd emptied all of it out. It was gone because it was all emoted throughout the event. So once again, thank you so much for all the love. It was just really cool. I felt a little bit like a tourist playing reporter for the weekend just because I hadn't done it in a while. And, you know, even if you've done it for a while, you still need reps to feel kind of clued in and in the groove. So I don't know if I did a good job, but it was just good to get back and feel like a reporter for a weekend. It's amazing to see Rick Moore, Greg Moore's dad, who was down. There was a party Sunday night. I had to miss that, unfortunately, catch my flight home, be with my lady. But that was a lot of Greg Moore's friends celebrating what's upcoming here, the 20th anniversary of his untimely and cruel loss at Fontana. Great to see Rick nonetheless. I forget who I was talking to, but came up and grabbed me in the paddock, and it was just really sweet to catch up with him. I hadn't seen him in forever, truly forever. So it's just beautiful to see Rick, who's just such an amazing person. So, yeah, I have Greg on my mind frequently. I think a lot of us who watched Greg come up, saw what he was, who he was, how talented he was. It's always sad when you lose a racer, when you have someone who you're confident is destined for championships and all manner of things, becoming an all-time great. It definitely stings a little more. That sting doesn't, the sting lessens. It never goes away. Also throughout here quickly before we get going with young Jack Harvey, looking to do 2 live podcasts at Laguna Seca. So we're going to have the Cooper Tire stage there. We're going to try and do something after qualifying on Saturday. Still don't have the exact time. Know that qualifying ends at about 2:45. So usually it takes an hour and a half for drivers to get clear of any potential media obligations, then engineering debriefs before they become available. Already have 2 people lined up. Got inquiries out to a number of folks, but got 2 people lined up. And if we have no one other than these 2, I think you're going to be really, really excited to come out and spend some time with them. Also going to try a second smaller one, kind of a old style MTV Unplugged, sit on the floor, small room, small group one in the old media center, which I have the second floor there, which the track is kindly given to me since it's no longer used, but I can find a use for it. So not exactly sure on the method. Have a couple of guests in mind. I already know one of them. Their team has said yes. Nonetheless, going to think about how I might do this. I don't know how many people would fit in the room. I'm thinking 30, maybe 40 if we really jam in tight there. But thinking of doing kind of truly almost an acoustic thing where no PA, no speakers, probably have microphones just so we can record this thing, but just more of a sit down, stand or pull up, bring your own chair. I don't think we're going to have enough, but just kind of pile into the room, sit down, and have a real comfy, close quarters live podcast with some pretty awesome IndyCar people. So working on that now. We'll obviously share more details once I have them. And yeah, thanks y'all, for real. It's been weird being away for 3 months. Y'all have showered me with love and support and encourage. My wife as well. Pretty amazing just to be there in person. And I don't know how many hugs were given or received, but yeah, just great to get back to the place that has been my home, that IndyCar paddock, whether it's working in IndyCar or the Road to Indy series or modern day on the media side. It's been my home since I was a teenager. So really, really cool last weekend in Portland. All right. Well, on behalf of Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, TorontoMotorsports.com, and Bell Racing Helmets, let's get going with our man, Jack Harvey. I think you're going to have fun with some of his answers, especially our conversation about who would win or who would lose in fights in the IndyCar paddock. And we run through almost the entire grid. And then Toby Sowery, who is a real blast, talking about his very first Indy Lights win and what he's hoping to have happen next year in America. All brought to you here on the Week in IndyCar. Jack Harvey, been not too long since we had you on the Week in IndyCar podcast. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well, mate. How are you?
Well, I'm glad that we're got to see one another from afar at Portland.
Yes.
I didn't really pay a lot of attention to what happened in the race, so I just figured let's start off the show. How'd things go for you, man?
I mean, the weekend on the whole was very solid for us, really. Managed to qualify fourth, which was great. Had a good start, kind of in a sandwich between Felix and Will, and came out of it quite well in third.
Did you get on the podium again like you did at the Indianapolis Grand Prix? Did all that work out okay? I mean, like you said, I think I seem to recall you qualifying well, so I assume everything went swimmingly on Sunday.
Everything was shaping up like it was going to go swimmingly.
Oh, and then, did something happen?
Yeah, I think Ryan Hunter-Reay was defending so hard from Alexander Rossi that maybe he missed his braking point, and then I got drilled in turn one, and that took us out of the race from fourth, which sucked.
No, do tell. This is the first I've heard of this.
I know. Maybe I haven't been on social media, but
well, let's kick off the questions. As always, I love my listeners. They're the best, for real. I'm not blowing smoke. They're just, the questions y'all send in, not only do I love reading them to our guests, but y'all make me laugh all the time. Let's see. Let's start off with Corey Matthews. Says, Jack, I know it's still raw, but what's your thought process when RHR gets into you? Are you initially mad or hurt or sad for the team? How do you compose yourself? And Corey also says, P.S., I loved the clapping. That's a classic. You just came up with a lifetime meme that I hope follows you.
I did not realize so many people were going to see the clap, if I'm honest. I had no idea that so many people were going to do it. Seeing how many people did, I might have rethought that. It was just a bit instinctive at that time, because initially I was just like, what happened there? And then I kind of thought about it, and then I got mad, and then I got sad for the team, because, really they did a great job this weekend.
Absolutely.
I know Michael was on the show last week, and everyone at Meyer Shank Racing is working so hard. It just felt like we had not robbed, but like that was potentially such a great result for us that you go through a whole range of emotions, mate. And then I guess the Brit in me came out quicker than I would have maybe have liked it to. And then I saw that NBC or IndyCar and NBCSN then put out a meme about it, and I was like, oh no, it started.
If that doesn't become a T-shirt by Laguna Seca here, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. Oh, Lord. Well, let's go to Douglas Cole next, who says, Marshall, it's great to see you back at the track. Thank you, Doug. And he also says, thanks for the live podcast on Saturday. He says, for Jack, RHR owned up to the mistake, including a sincere apology in social media. But have you had a chance to talk with him? And he says, after something like that, do you want to talk with him or another driver who might have hit you rather than just move on? He also says, great to see you show so well and hope to see you full-time next year. So what is it? Do you really want to get into it in person? How do you handle the after effects?
Mate, there's no good way to handle something like that, really, because as soon as the race was finished, Ryan came straight over and apologized. And honestly, did not want to hear it. It was still pretty raw for me. Where I just didn't want anything to do with it. And then later that night, I sent him a text and was like, I needed a minute just to breathe. Like, you probably should have texted me the day after the race. So I appreciate the sincerity behind it. I know it wasn't intentional. Doesn't make the result any better or worse or an easier pill to swallow. That being said, I don't know what good way there is to handle that, apart from, like, I texted him and just said, it's happened. I wish it hadn't. Let's move on. And just go from there, really. So, it is what it is. I texted him. I said, it's happened. It's done. We move on. Let's go racing hard in Laguna.
Fair enough. Couple more here because, of course, we wouldn't just get 2 questions on the crash. Howard Bennett says, question for Jack. After such a difficult and early finish to the race, what actually does happen next? Do you go back to the paddock for the briefest of debriefs? Do you put the kettle on for a brew up and break out the digestifs, hobnobs, and jaffa cakes? Do you watch the race? Are you even obliged to remain at the circuit until the race is over?
Well, I mean, that was even honestly kind of an interesting one because none of the cars on the team finished. Like, James didn't get to, Connor didn't get to. So that was the shortest debrief that we've had, I think, as a team of the year. I was gutted. I didn't have any PG tips. I did have some Cadbury's chocolate, though. So, I mean, that took a little bit of the pain away. Honestly, my engineer stayed and watched the race on the timing stand, so I went and hung out there for a bit, just kind of tried to watch, tried to learn, see which strategy was playing out, et cetera. So I think the frustration of what happened, you can't change or avoid, but you could still learn something. And I think that we had a good strategy in place for the race, which, I feel like we had whether we would or not, I feel like we could have put together a strong podium race. But it sucks when you're hearing the cars going around and I'm sat in the trailer just hanging out in my jeans.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I wish I was in my suit, my helmet on, sweating, pushing as hard as I can to achieve whatever fuel number we were trying to do, whatever lap time we were trying to do, and, hopefully a podium spot.
Let's go to Andre Good. Coming in via Twitter, who says, Jack, if Laguna Seca was this weekend, would the team have a hard time making the race due to the damage from Portland?
No, definitely not. The car actually went back on the trailer on Sunday night, completely ready and repaired. So surprisingly, there wasn't as much damage as what it looked like there could have been. So that was nice. And then I think the guys stayed and prepped the car Monday, and they said that everything was, totally perfect, and the bits they did have damage, we can easily get repaired. So I don't think that was not going to be a concern.
Our friend Peter Nutt from Holland asks, Jack, what's been your biggest crash damage bill in or outside of a race? And he asks, is there any kind of insurance for this? Who picks up the bill? Are you mailing it to Ryan Hunter-Ray this time?
I leave that side usually to Shank, mate, if I'm honest. I just try not to crash his car too often. I don't know what the final figures have been, but I mean, I've had some which I shuddered, when I heard how much it was.
Did you say you sharded?
And shuddered.
Okay, that shuddered. Got it. I thought you said sharded. You might have done both. It'd be understandable.
Honestly, mate, you might have done both, and it would have been pretty justified, I think. But no, I think, Michael's pretty sensible and realistic. I mean, he knows these things are going to happen. It just sucks when it was for such a good result and it was even out of our control.
All right, one or two more on your abbreviated race, and we'll get some other fun ones. This one comes in from Mike Brennan on Twitter. Says, Jack, obviously what happened with you and RHR wasn't your fault, but how much do sponsors look at DNFs? For those who don't know, DNF is did not finish. How much do sponsors look at DNFs to determine future involvement? Mike also asks, Marshall, whatever happened to that announcement you had to table on Saturday? As I've mentioned right after mentioning it had to be tabled, it'd be coming out on Sunday. It did come out on Sunday at noon, and that was the ABC Supply news that they were leaving, and also that Matthias Leist is not expected to return to the team. But on the sponsor side, Jack, knowing how closely you work with SiriusXM, AutoNation, etc., and of the drivers in the paddock, I mean, you truly are one of the most directly connected drivers to your sponsors. Will Power, for example, I know he has represented Verizon for a decade. Will didn't go out and get Verizon. Will isn't the one then servicing that relationship and that sponsorship program. You, on the other hand, absolutely central to those on the car who are a part of what you do. How does a crash like this, how do you manage that afterwards in speaking with whether it's a CEO or whomever to make sure they're good, even if it wasn't your fault?
Yeah, it's a tough one, mate, honestly. And I think the thing that particularly sucks about the weekend was, Ryan's obviously sponsored by AutoNation as well. And, so is Alexander. So it wasn't great, obviously, from that side.
The three cars, two of the three are definitely in the used, the for sale used lot right now. Dinged up.
They were. I mean, it happens. I mean, this was actually what I said to Ryan after the race was, we get so few. I say so few. Obviously, 10 races is a great amount of races to do this year, but if you're not doing all of them, you don't know when the next, or when the next race is going to be, but you don't know when the next time you're going to be that competitive comes. Like we were flying all weekend, like P8 in practice 2, P7 in practice 3, qualified 4th, was running 4th. And in a series as competitive as IndyCar is, mate, that's not easy, let alone doing it on a part-time schedule. So the sting really comes at, when you look across the season on a whole, and you look at the missed opportunities, and what we're going to see is a 19th place finish, knowing it could have been, confidently, I would say it was going to be a top 5. Optimistically, I think it could have been a podium. It definitely stings because at that point, this is a results-driven world. We all know that. So I'm very lucky with AutoNation and with Sirius. Obviously, they both come to the track an awful lot. They understand that you have good days and bad days. Sometimes it's in your control, sometimes it's not. And, at the end of the day, all we're trying to do collectively is get as many good results as possible all the time. This one stings extra for many reasons, but, I think everything's looking pretty good for 2020 and beyond. So I don't think this race really affected anything other than our ego and, what we go to the track to try and achieve, probably. So, but again, a badly timed result at a bad time could cost you everything that you've worked for. So you never really want to get in that situation. So it has potential to go south rapidly.
Definitely think you did have the positive, fortunately, of while we were taken out while running up front and having had a very competitive weekend. It's another thing to go back to your sponsor and say, yeah, we qualified 21st and got taken out while running 23rd.
If we were battling for last and that happened, then there'd probably be some tougher conversations to be had. But at least, we were doing it from a very solid place on track. So I think the positives of the weekend shine through more so than what happened, and that's what we'll be taking to the next race as confidence. But yeah.
Ted Nesbitt asks, Jack, how badly did you want to smack RHR in the head for Sunday's dive bomb? He's not a small guy, so I'm not sure.
He's quite a bit taller than me, but I feel like I'm British, so I'm always game.
I love it. I'm always game. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Maybe I haven't. Maybe in my head I did. IndyCar and probably most racing series really and truly need to have some sort of either MMA octagon cage or just a regular boxing ring set up at the final race of the year. And after the race, all the grudges, all the whatever, everyone takes them out so that we go into the off season with the slate clean. If it's someone we're like, I am not going to be able to live with myself if I don't knock that SOB out. Hey, man, the ring is yours. My only fear is whatever TV rating we'd get for the race on Sunday, this might actually double or triple it. Yeah, the race might be on cable. The IndyCar boxing MMA match might have to be on big network NBC. I think there might be something there. Can you imagine Bourdais and Sato? I mean, that would be the funniest, cutest thing ever, too.
It'd be like a slap. It'd be like, you slap me, I'll slap you, and just go until one of us gets bored.
Yeah.
I went to a hockey game a while ago, and I seen something that I've never seen before. They basically just decided that they were going to throw their gloves on the floor, and then they just went at it. And I was thinking, well, what if drivers did the same thing? They basically just went to like an area, like threw their gloves on the floor, and that meant that basically it was on.
See, I think you got a perfect scenario here, because if we look in sports car racing, this happens where you'll get time penalties. And so they'll have to pull into the penalty box during the race and sit for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever. I like the idea of under caution, there being, because somebody did something to one another. There's a rule that says the drivers won't lose laps if they pull into the quote, handle it yourself penalty area and just start swinging. Again, not, gloves, of course. We don't want bare knuckle, but I think some sort of driver to driver justice. That's the thing we need to look at. Sponsored by the Justice Brothers. Even better. We've solved many problems.
If it makes ESPN highlights at the end of the day, that's a successful day, is what I heard.
See, the only problem is the drivers would say, great idea, Pruett. We're also going to include journalists that piss us off. And by the way, no need for you to set up in the media center anymore. You're just going to stay in that ring because we're going to be knocking the crap out of you all day, every day.
I think it's that thing as well. I feel like drivers, I think they're brave to go the speed that they go to. After that, I don't know if people look at drivers and they're just immediately like, oh, wow, what a badass. Yeah. I think it's like, the helmet goes down, then you become brave, and they take the helmet off, and like reality comes back to you a bit. Yeah. I think you look at a hockey player and you go, that's a bad man right there. I don't know if people look at drivers in the same way. Yeah, no, you got a good point. I mean, Will Power is the only one who we know is legitimately unhinged. Like, that's a guy you don't want to fight. I love unhinged. What a great analogy. He's the best. There might be a few sneaky ones. I know we've said this before in the podcast. We have Gabby Chavez. No, he's not in the series right now, but he's regularly training on the MMA side. There are a few. Is he? Yeah, Connor. Obviously, with his wrestling background, got that low center of gravity. Right. He's American. Connor used to wrestle. I mean, he drinks. He eats a lot of chicken wings. I mean, he's kind of got the perfect body for taking you down and just pummeling the crap out of you. So I feel like Connor is the most American or quintessentially American person that I've ever met. Could you say Alexander Rossi fighting? No. Yeah, neither can I. I honestly, no. And he's got the... How about him and Hinch in the ring? I mean, now that'd be a tickle fest, right? That'd be a pillow James, fight. But I can't imagine James fighting either. Trying to think who else. Now this I'm not saying looks like he could be down. Yeah. No? Graham, maybe it's his size. He's big, trust me, definitely the biggest IndyCar driver we have. He's a man of words. Yeah, I'm not sure I see that 100%. I'm trying to think who else. Bourdais? I mean, he is definitely a lover, but he's on fire. I know he gets mad really, really easily. There's something there that tells me something weird might happen. Pagano, he can get indignant at times,
Newgarden? Yeah, I think that might be a pillow fight right there. What about Kanaan?
Joe, I don't know if you guys have them in America. Have you ever had a Milky Way in from the UK?
No.
Joe, I'll send you the picture later. Joseph looks like the Milky Bar Kid.
Jesus, I don't think
I swear to God, I will find the photo and I'll send it to you. And if you just don't say, I get it, then I'll be so sad.
Okay. Well, I'll just throw another name at you. And this might be the most non-fighting of all. No, gosh. I think it might be an Andretti Autosport thing. I mean, I'm looking at Marco Andretti. I love Marco. He's what, 5'9", 100 and something pound. I mean, there's it's just not there. But what about Zach Veach? Even smaller.
Yeah, but I feel like he could hit you twice before you've even realized anything's happened.
Would it hurt?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Maybe. I don't know, because he does a lot of rock climbing. He's got good hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, that's a fair point. He'd probably get in 30 blows before I could even catch him. I'd probably just be winded and fall over. What about Colton? There's some.
No.
Are you sure? There's some skate punk in him. I swear. I'm not saying he'd be a great fighter, but
he does rock the white high sock very well.
Yes, he's got the flat brim going nice and low. He's a drummer, right? I
miss his long hair though.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to be a little bit of a misfit or miscreant to be a drummer. So I think
that's true.
Ed Carpenter strikes me as someone who could really not let a grudge go and might just keep punching. Now, here's one. And I'm not sure. This might be the dumbest thing I've said, or I might be picking out something. So after the race on Sunday, standing down in the Carlin pits waiting to interview Charlie Kimball, who had a nice run, saw Max Chilton jump out of the car and just lay into their team manager, Colin Hale. There's something that makes me think. I know Max is, Silver Spoon, that guy and whatnot. So part of me that thinks maybe that British thing, I don't know if he'd be good at fighting, but I get the feeling he wouldn't be above throwing some punches. Do you agree?
I feel like he'd give it his best go.
Yeah.
I feel like that's all British. Maybe not great at fighting, but we're always game. Also, the thing about Max, he's really good at clay pigeon shooting.
Oh.
So it might not be the person to get you to your face, but he could probably put some pellets in you somewhere.
There might be a red laser dot on you at some point in time, and he'll get you from across the track.
That's it.
What about our two Swedes? We got Felix, kind of, in the kid height sample, and then we got Marcus, who's obviously, full adult size. You feel like either of them might, knuckle up if they had to?
I feel like they'd have your back. I feel like maybe they're not seeking it, but they feel like they'd have your back.
Wingmen. Yeah. I like where you're going here. By the way, we've just taken a pause here to talk about who would be good fighters or whatnot in IndyCar for no reason. What do you think about Santino Ferrucci?
I think he likes to talk a good game.
Ooh.
I don't know. I saw he was saying after Toronto that he wanted to go and punch the Carlin drivers of that weekend. And I was like, really? You're going to do that? You're going to go and punch Sage Karam? The guy who is really fantastically good at wrestling, you're going to go and try and beat that guy up? Okay.
Have you ever been tied into a pretzel before, young Mr. Ferrucci? Because that's the guy to do
Santino.
it. Yeah.
Santino's
I love it. Look, I love the kid.
Fighter? No, he's like the Jack Russell of the group. The guy who's barking all the time, but then when shit hits the fan, he's not barking. Then
he's the Norman Pagano of Dale Coyne Racing. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Okay, I can see that. The last one that comes to mind, maybe a little bit of a wild card, Scott Dixon. I mean, he's from New Zealand, so that kind of implies he grew up either being punched or punching people. What do you think about Dixie?
I feel like he could be a secret ninja.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning.
He can pretty much do anything anyway, so I feel like this wouldn't be totally out of his wheelhouse.
Plus, he's a ginger. I know he's more it's more strawberry ginger.
It's
but
ginger.
There's just an inner rage possessed by all gingers that. He's
the Iceman, just the guy who probably you're not expecting it, then suddenly bang.
Rips your arm off and beats you over the head with it. I think I think we've sussed most of the field. Maybe I left Mateus laced out. He's just too nice of a kid.
He's the hair. You couldn't touch his hair, mate.
Yeah. You might break your hand. It's kind of an artificial helmet.
It's like you hit it and like you've either lost your hand or you've broken it.
It might not come back. Yes, that's true. There might be some sort of black hole in his hair where you lose his hand. All right. Well, Ted Nesbitt, I didn't know that we were going to take a little diversion here and spend a good while talking about IndyCar drivers and fighting, but I enjoyed it. All right, Jack, let's get back on track. We'll go with one more question here related to your awesomely long, completed every lap. Portland race. Jameen Tuttle says, Jack, did you get any warning on the radio or see RHR coming, or was the impact a total surprise? And he says, if you did have a second to prepare, what did you do?
Well, I was already in like the braking zone. I was actually going through my downshifts, and then suddenly my spotter said inside, and I heard the not panic, but like I heard the
urgency of that.
Yes, and honestly, all I remember thinking was like, that's not possible.
There's no inside to take.
There's no inside. Like I was on the curb myself. So honestly, mate, without being able to like rewind time and just give him a wide berth and honestly just brake super early and let him just fly on past the corner, I think I was his braking spot. So
we're going to call you Brembo. That's what, until we get to Laguna, you're going to be Jack Brembo Harvey because you were his brakes. Fair enough. Let's go to James Hart. He says, question for Jack as a fellow Lincolnshire resident with a son named Jack.
Oh, nice.
How does a boy from Lincolnshire end up in IndyCar? He says, I watched Indy 500 with my sons and wife for the first time this year. Us being James, Jack, Charlie, and Joe. As you can imagine, we all ended up cheering for our namesakes, and the boys have followed you all throughout the rest of the season.
Well, I started go-karting. If they're in Lincoln, I started go-karting at a track called PFI, just out in Fullbeck. Honestly, mate, pretty standard path really to this point. You know, progressed through the go-karting ranks, and then started racing in open-wheel cars in Europe. Won in Formula 3, the year in GP3. Got an opportunity to come to America, and honestly, I knew what I wanted to achieve, and that was what we're doing now. So we just kept working hard to try and do that. But, you know, I remember the first time I went to PFI, and it's literally 10 minutes away from where we live. And I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing I'd ever been to. There was a few really good guys there. And I always try and tell people, everybody starts somewhere. That period, you know, no matter how good someone ends up being, they don't start that way, you know. So if they take their kid to there or Fullbeck's track, which is next door, you know, there's some really great people. Like some of the premier go-karting in the UK is there. So no mystery path or anything like that. Just a lot of hard work and perseverance, really.
I'm going to throw in a question of my own here, Jack. So one of the things that Robin Miller and I speak about on a somewhat regular basis is Joseph Newgarden, the amount of time and years needed at a smaller team, that being Sarah Fisher, Wink Hartman, then with Ed Carpenter thrown in, took Jack 3 or so years to really find his feet. The team also, as it did better, improved itself, was able to give him better cars. Combined, there was a definite progression those first couple of years that got him to a point where he was able to start winning races, start featuring, and honestly capture the attention of Roger Penske and others. Where do you feel you are at now after a couple years in the series, right? I mean, 2017, you did one race and such. So you've added each year. You haven't had full time like Joseph, but how are you feeling where you're at on that? Got a decent amount of time under my belt. Where might I be on that breakthrough point like we saw with Joseph after a couple years in his career?
I mean, honestly, mate, I hope we're kind of like right about there. You know, I think we've shown we can compete for podiums. I think hopefully the breakthrough is just kind of getting to the full season for us right now, which is what we're working extremely hard to try and do. Things looking very good on that regard. It's hard to say, mate, you know, again, without a crystal ball and looking back at it in a year's time or a few years' time or whatever. But I think if we could get to a full-time drive, I love racing with Michael. I've got no interest in racing with anybody else. Michael and Jim have been great with me. AutoNation and SiriusXM, they've all been, fantastic partners to keep progressing with. So I really would just like to stick with him for as long as we can and, go and compete and show what I know we can. So I would say, I guess it depends what you define as breakthrough, but I would say the breakthrough for us hopefully is going to be happening sooner rather than later, and that'll be getting to do a full season.
Well, amen to that. Let's go to our pals at Lemons of Love, who said Jack came to our golf outing. What a pleasant guy he is. We're so lucky to have the Meyer Shank Racing Team supporting Lemons of Love. Tell folks a little bit about that, Jack. They have been a really amazing organization. They have sent a couple of care packages our way from my wife as she's been going through chemotherapy. Tell us about coming out to help them and raise funds.
That was a really great day, actually. I went up to a golf course just near Chicago, and basically I went because Michael asked me to initially. That was like the main reason for going. And then I got there and I heard the story about what they're doing, how they're helping people. And it was something that I could totally get behind. The founder, Jill, is a fantastically nice lady, just wants to help people. And again, I can get behind that. I've been in this situation like you're in right now. But seeing the happiness that it can bring to people who are really struggling, I thought was just fantastic. So going, I didn't exactly know what I was getting into, but like I said to her after the event, if there's anything that I could do to help, and spread the word or, just in general be of help, then that's what I want to do.
Good man. Let's go to Brett Ross, who says, Jack, what race would you like to compete in that you have not had a chance to do yet?
Le Mans obviously would be pretty cool. I was pretty jealous of James and Alex for going and doing Bathurst. I think that's pretty awesome too. So they're the two ones on my list that I'd really like to get to.
I've been to both. I would recommend both.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Which one did you prefer?
Well, I've only been to Bathurst once. I covered Le Mans 10 years in a row. So I would honestly go back, go down under again if I had a chance just to enjoy the event again. It's just amazing. Amazing circuit, amazing people and fans. Not saying Le Mans you won't find amazing people or circuits. Can tell you, though, that Le Mans, being as big as it is, it's very segmented. It's a giant place. It's hard to feel like you get stuck in because it is so spread out. At Bathurst, at least, man, it just felt like you're part of one big community that wanted to show up, get really, really drunk, yell and shout, and just love it. I mean, it's a feeling of a true celebration and motor racing event. Le Mans, I would say, while there are celebrations that certainly go on among various camps and folks at the track, I can't say that there was that same sense of community that I've found at the 24-hour race. So definitely, if you want to go and if you can compete in it, I think you're going to have an amazing time in both. But just for those who might want to attend, to say they've been to an amazing international event, I think Bathurst might be the one where you come back both hung over the worst, but also feeling like you were.
That's how I felt Monday morning.
Yeah, well, there you go. It felt more like you were going to a big festival concert style thing. It's kind of Coachella meets V8s kind of thing. So definitely that would be my recommendation there. Let's go to IndyCar Nana, who says, have you had much time to shoot sporting clays? And also says it's one of my hobbies.
Honestly, I haven't since I've been in America. That seems to be something I do when I'm in the UK. I actually don't know what their process looks like for me to buy a gun in America, actually, with my visa.
Is there a Walmart or Target nearby? I believe within the next half hour you could be randomly firing.
Could be. Honestly, I go shooting with my dad and a bunch of our longtime friends. And honestly, I go just because it's funny banter. Like I love going and trying to hit as many as I can, but just something that we do together. So kind of something I just do more in the UK. But people keep telling me there's places to go in Indy, but I'm not finding them. So
I think you just go out in the middle of the Speedway paddock, right? I think you just kind of, or maybe the golf course. I believe you can just go out on the golf course and just start.
I wonder what would happen if the 500 next year we just did that in the middle of Gasoline Alley.
I can't see any problems. Just don't tell anyone I said it was.
I think
okay.
Doug would be on. I think Doug will be on board.
Yes, just wait until I show up and start putting bullseyes on the side of whatever Corvette he has for the month and whatnot. He might not feel the same. Going to go to Dean Ackerman. He says, "Hi, Jack. I've heard both Chevy and Honda IndyCar racers get their choice of vehicles from the two car companies. Says, I'm sure Acura NSXs and Corvette ZR1s are off limits unless the driver wins a big race, but wondering what Acura or Honda vehicle you have selected for yourself."
Well, actually, I didn't get one of those right now. We're hoping to maybe get one next year. I have a Honda Civic that I got through AutoNation, actually. So hopefully next year I'll be on the Acura. If I was going to get one, I like the MDX, I think.
Good man. Good man.
I like the MDX. I wouldn't say no to the NSX, but I don't believe that was on the list of potentials.
Yes, they like to get them back in one piece. We're going to go to the Reddit IndyCar group here, the user Minardi F1, who says, "For Jack, I don't think you've ever had a die-cast car made of one of your cars. Is this something that you would find cool as a driver?" And asks, "Do you keep any items or memorabilia from your own career?" So do you have any die-casts of your hot rods, and what does the old memorabilia collection look like?
It's growing, actually. I think they just have announced they're going to do a die-cast of our car, which is pretty sweet, I'm excited to see how it turns out. And then I've got one from my first two 500s, working on getting one for this year, a guy that I know is extremely good at painting them. So, yeah, it's just something it's slowly been growing, but hoping that we'll have a die-cast here soon.
Jordan Darwin says, "Jack, you and Mike Shank have a very loyal relationship. Any interesting IndyCar offers that have been floated for you to leave the team or sub for other teams on weekends where you're not racing in a Meyer Shank racing vehicle?"
Not really. I mean, not ones any that we've, pursued or, they've been an initial conversation maybe, but, I love racing for Michael. I love the program that we're building, and we gave that 110% effort as our primary focus, as our only focus. So not something we definitely haven't seeked or looked for. I actually am hopeful that maybe we're going to get in one of his sports cars here soon as well. So I keep asking him every day when he's going to put me in one of his Acuras. But no, he's a great guy to race for. And, our program and the way it's playing out and progressing, I think is going extremely well, so I don't want to mess anything up with that.
I love it that normally it'd be the folks driving the Acura GT car asking if and when he or she could get in Mike's Indy car. You're doing the opposite. That's kind of fun. Our pal Vincent.
I just like driving, mate, really.
Yeah, well, look, it's what you do for a living. I believe it's on your business card, so makes sense. Our pal Vincent 1701 from the Tweeters says, "Jack, being a former member of McLaren's Young Driver program, how did you view their Indy 500 struggles? And what are your thoughts on them now joining IndyCar with Aero SPM?"
I mean, I think for to take the latter part of the question first, I think them partnering with Rick and Sam is a great thing. I think it's great for the series. I think it's just a lot of. I think it shows the growth that IndyCar is going through, the positiveness towards the series as a whole. That one of the most famous racing names in the world has decided to come and be a part of it. I think that's fantastic for our sport. Mate, there's so many things that you don't know about May and how it played out, and what happened, why it happened, and things like that. And without being involved, it would be wrong to speculate or to give an opinion. I know obviously everybody was disappointed that Fernando didn't make the race, but I think it also shows just how difficult it is. And not that you're happy to see anybody not make the race. But I thought the good storyline of the day was Juncos making it with Kyle Kaiser. So, I kind of feel a bit indifferent about it. I just wanted to go there, focus on what we're doing, but I'm glad that they're coming back and giving it what looks like from the outside a bit more of a serious effort.
Our friend Jerry Sudduth sends in a note here on Facebook, says, Jack, you guys do very well whenever you race, in spite of not running a full schedule. What do you think is the reason for this success? Jerry also asks, do your Sirius XM ties get you free subscriptions for satellite radio?
Hey, so I remember I asked Jim if we could figure something out for the subscription, and he was like, wait, he's like, how much money do I spend? And then I was like, I think I can afford my own subscription.
I love the fact that the CEO of the company is like, nah, kid, you can pay whatever it is, $49.95 a year.
Jim, they're great. Jim, they do help out now a little bit with that. But preparation, mate, I'm not at every race, but I'm in every debrief. I'm on the phone all the time with the guys to see what's going on, how everything's progressing, and honestly, just trying to stay ready, like as and when I'm needed. So coming to the track, obviously we did have a while to prepare for Portland. I think we prepared very well. So, I think on the whole, it's just, the classic preparation.
We should also mention that we have a announcement coming up here very soon on the Meyer Shank Racing Team's plans for 2020, not just the amount of races, but also the partner team as well. So we'll look forward to that too, coming out here in or around the Laguna season finale. Jack Wojnar says, something for you. He says, you recently ran a special edition Acura IndyCar livery. If you could have any manufacturer join IndyCar, who would it be and why?
Ooh. It's a good question, mate, really. I think I'm kind of torn. I don't know if it would be cool to see like a European car manufacturer come over, just because I think it would bring another group of fans, kind of a rivalries then all around the world, just from car manufacturers. But then in the same breath, maybe it would be cool to, see maybe Ford come back even, or something like that. Then you've got a real American center of IndyCar racing. So did Audi look at it? I feel like I saw that Audi were maybe looking at it. It was Alfa Romeo.
A lot of looking going on.
I think it would be cool to see them progress on from just looking to, committing to it. But, I think that'd be pretty sweet. Someone from Europe or another American manufacturer.
I was thinking you're going to say MG, right? Get good old Morris Garage is back involved. Well, back in general. But let's see. Cody Bray, as we start to wind down our final questions here. Cody Bray asks, why do some drivers sit so high in the cockpit and others so low? I
saw this exchange.
Yes, mentioning that Zach Veach, I believe one of the shortest drivers in the series, sits pretty high, while Bourdais sits pretty low. Can you answer this dear question?
Well, I think just, to visually look at them is a bit of a self-explanatory kind of thing. Zach, bless him, is tiny. You've got to sit high so he can see over the wheel. Honestly, mate, it's a total preference thing. It depends what vision you want to have when you're racing. There's been some debate about if you sit too high, if it changes the aerodynamics on the car a little bit, etc. But I'm not entirely sure about that. It's honestly just a total preference between drivers.
Also, the center of gravity too, changing roll centers and all kinds of stuff where you might want to change roll centers and such with extra mass sitting up high. And
I heard that some people have a different seat for the ovals that's lower.
You might look into that. You might look into that.
We might have to look into that.
You might look at getting your neck lowered too. That could help as well.
Making the seat might be easier.
All right. That's a fair point. Let's see. Go to JJ at JJ Gertler on Twitter. Says, Jack, Laguna's next. Since the current Indy cars have nothing beyond initial test experience there, this coming from back in February, does Shank's sports car experience help the team to maybe at least get closer to an initial setup.
Oh, definitely. Well, I think Michael's had really good success as well there. So,
Yeah.
Leaning on the sports car side for this, just to see what's worked, what set of directions have worked, and then try and compare them to other tracks that we've been to that we know, there might be a correlation to, and seeing which ones might translate or transfer over is key. But, when we tested there earlier in the year, I know it got rained out, or at least a lot of the day got rained out, but we unloaded with a very fast car. So, cautiously optimistic that, one, it's going to be a good weekend for us, and also that Michael's sports car experience is going to come in handy as well.
JJ also asks, let's see as I try and tab back here. JJ asks, is the arrangement with Aeroschmidt Peterson as such that information from your team gets shared with their number 5 and number 7 Hondas as well?
Mate, the best way to look at it is just like a two-way street. There's moments where we help them and there's moments where they help us. It's just a sign of a really good partnership. Obviously, one that we're not going to be a part of past Laguna. We know with McLaren's involvement and them going to Chevrolet. But I think the arrangement that we had with SPM and Meyer Shank Racing worked out about as perfectly as what you could have hoped for. So, it's a total two-way street. No matter which way it flows from, it's just flowing both ways.
From Twitter as well, Tanya Frano asks, I was wondering, Jack, if you do any testing when you have breaks between races. And she also asks, is it hard getting back into the car after being off for a few weeks? We should also note that IndyCar's testing policies are such where you don't have the freedom to go and test regularly or often in your specific IndyCar. But curious if you try and get into kart or something similar just to keep your senses sharp.
I've got a couple of go-karts in the UK. Again, I don't have anything out here, which we're really trying to work on getting. I chatted with my old go-karting boss and just asked him if there's anything that we could do to, try and fix that. But, we go on the HPD simulator as well, as much as we can. And honestly, just try and stay as sharp as possible. Obviously in the gym, we've just certain exercises that my trainers have come up with to try and keep me, keep my reactions high and sharp and whatnot. But, mate, testing is so expensive and it's so difficult to get to. The series obviously regulate it extremely hard. So, it's a pretty tough, it's a tough sport in that regard. If you compare it to like tennis, for example, you can walk to your nearest court and just, get cracked on, where, for us, it's a whole production just to go and do a single test day.
We, Mr. Harvey, are down to our final two questions for you here on the Week in IndyCar. Penultimate question comes in from Ryan Terpstra, who I believe sent in 47 this week. Ryan says, what does it say about Jack in the Meyer Shank Racing team that instead of feeling bad that a great race was ruined, I thought, let's see what they can do next? He says, I hope they're full-time and they find a great partner next season. He says, I expect making the Fast Six won't be enough to say the weekend was successful anymore. Does Ryan's feeling about where you guys are at or where you could be, does that line up with your, future thought process of Fast Sixes won't be enough to make you feel good about what you've done over a weekend?
I mean, honestly, mate, IndyCar is so competitive. I think if you get disappointed that you start in fourth instead of third or second, that's a great day to be in. But I think it's maybe a smidge unrealistic, seeing like even Joseph, who's leading the championship, didn't make it out of the top 12 this weekend, and neither did Simon. So the series on its own is so competitive, where anytime you're in the Fast Six is probably a strong weekend.
Well, I know we're going to try and say the announcement here, but, we can kind of just tell our listeners the fact that you guys are partnering with Team Penske and got them to switch to Honda.
Amazing,
saying,
mate.
Ryan might be onto something here.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to let Michael answer that one instead.
Okay, fair enough.
But no, I think, anytime we're in the Fast Six is a great result. And I agree with him, it's not strength of character is not when you're having a good moment. It's how you rebound. And granted, it wasn't our fault, but we still need to go to Laguna and have a good weekend. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to try and do.
All right, let's close the latest Jack Harvey experience with a question coming off of the good old tweeters from KP, and in brackets, Green Gecko 119. Says, from Mr. Harvey. Oh, you've become a Mr. Harvey. That's so nice.
Mr. Harvey, that feels like my dad.
Exactly. It's awesome, by the way, seeing your dad at every race. You know, seriously.
Yeah, he's a good egg, mate.
He's a character like his kid, but it's cool to see, you know, true fan. This is being done as a family. I really do enjoy that. KP says,
family's my number one, mate.
Totally. Says, remarkable talent for keeping the car intact, except for a couple of unavoidable incidents that weren't on you. KP says, what preparation goes into being smart with the car? He says, it doesn't seem like you're giving up much speed. And there's also a closing question here. But that is a great point, and I do try and call that out, at least in whatever story I'm writing. If the intelligence, the articulation of, I'm going to go bad fast and go forward, but I'm also not going to put myself in dumb situations where I can end my day prematurely. And that's the key that makes champions and those who aren't wondering why. Curious here, KP believes that the same thing is seen within you. Is it an intentional thing? Is it a natural thing? How does that happen?
I mean, honestly,
because I know you're dumb as a rock. I mean, I'm trying to play things up here to paint things nicely for you.
Yeah, paint a nice picture for me. You know, honestly, I've never really been a big crasher, so that's always been good. Kind of always understood. Yeah, no, I want to win as much as anybody else does, but I also recognise in a championship battle that second place is still a good result. Doesn't mean we want to win any less. And since I've been in IndyCar, it's always been on an extremely tight budget so far, and by crashing would mean potentially not going to the next race, which was something that was just a must avoid scenario. So I think trying to balance that, the risk versus reward, but, you know, understanding that those limits change, you know, like before and earlier in the year, you know, for us to get in the top 12 would have been, you know, a fantastic result. And that was me driving to the limit of what we had, where with the car and my confidence rising and the car getting better at Portland, it obviously was a top 6. So I think it's just being sensible on where we take the risk, how we take the risk, what's the reward, and go from there. I think the only thing, you know, that confused me a bit about Ryan's day was why it was happening so early in the race. You know, he was obviously defending pretty hard, you know, against his own teammate, and you're like, wow, dude, I mean, that was like the first racing lap, really. You know, that was the first time we'd gone past start finish in anger, and it was disappointing that the day got cut short that way. But I think these things are intentional, mate. I mean, I don't think anyone is lucky for that long, or, you know, that unlucky for that long. So it's just trying to strike that balance of making sure we get the end result, take the risk where appropriate, and if it's not appropriate, not taking it.
KP also asks our final question for you. Best British beer, says asking for a friend.
Best British beer. Oof. Depends what you like, mate, I guess. I know a lot of people are partial to Boddingtons.
Big fan of Boddingtons.
Yeah, me too. A little heavy sometimes. I have to be in the mood for it, but if I was gonna pick one and it had to be British, Boddingtons is probably where I go. I know a lot of people like Newcastle too.
No, those are bad people who have no taste in beer.
I can't say I'm not a fan, but my sister went to university there, so, you know, you got to try it.
What about something dark and heavy?
Beer.
I mean, I know Guinness is obviously the go-to for many, at least in America, when they think of British beers. But are there any non-Guinness
I think it is there too.
beer? Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Boddington's is probably as heavy as I get.
Okay. Well, you're no longer heavy. I am, but you're no longer heavy. So I think we ended on a really awkward segue. All right, Jack Harvey. Well,
thank you.
I just wanted to have you on, man, because even though the race did not pan out the way that it should have for you, was really happy to see you and this little team. I don't mean little in terms of talent, quantity of people, etc., but just, look, you guys are part-time. You're having to come in being cold, as some of our listeners have said. You're coming in having to insert among full-time teams that are just fully warmed up, in a flow, bang, bang, bang. It's really awesome to see you come into a weekend like Portland, as you did last year, and just look like you belonged at the front, qualified amazingly, were on target for doing something good in the race. Just really happy to see you and the team starting to get to that place where, as Ryan Terpstra mentioned, we're beginning to expect this. I think that's a really great marker of where this program's headed.
Thank you.
Well, go drink some Boddingtons. Good Lord, I haven't been drinking already here. Or Boddingtons.
It's our fantasy football draft party tonight, mate. So might have to sink a couple of spotted cows back just for good measure.
Good man, Jack Harvey. Look forward to seeing you here soon, and congrats on a almost excellent weekend.
Thank you, and it was great to see you back at the track as well, mate.
Thanks, pal. Toby Sowery, was really awesome watching you spray champagne Sunday in Portland after winning your first Indy Lights with the HMD/Pelfrey outfit. Felt like, honestly, could have happened at least once or twice earlier this year. Before we get into the questions that have come in for you and share with folks a little bit about your background before coming to Indy Lights, tell us about standing atop the podium, the place you've wanted to be since race one.
Yeah, well, obviously Portland was a fantastic event for us. And it was a bittersweet weekend. You know, obviously the events in Spa kind of dampened the mood a lot. But looking at just our weekend inside of Portland, it was fantastic. You know, the team have worked tirelessly for hours, as have I, to get this. But as you said, you know, we feel it's a little bit later than maybe it should have been. We got very close to St. Petersburg, and after the gateway test, we thought we could have a chance there. But, yeah, it was amazing, you know. Considering we weren't supposed to do the whole season, it was an amazing result, and it felt incredible.
Let's talk a little bit about this team that you were with. Would say that your involvement, even as someone coming in as a rookie to Indy Lights, learning so many of these, or I guess all the tracks for the first time, might expect that you would be unable to contribute a lot, but still, it would appear from the outside as if you've been able to have a really good impact on the overall program and to uplift everything that's been going on due to the competitive state you've been in all year. Yeah,
obviously, you know, at the end of the day, it's about getting the car around as fast as we can. So there's only so much a data engineer and an engineer can do, and likewise with a driver. So it's always about the relationship and bond that you have with the team. And obviously, this team has been focused on David. Was the driver that was doing the whole season. So, you know, for St. Petersburg and, you know, the majority of the season before we knew we could compete in the rest of it, it was about helping the team develop and helping David progress, as I've probably had a little bit more experience than him at this sort of level. So, yeah, you know, obviously not knowing the tracks can be quite tough, but, you know, at the end of the day, if you do a consistent job and provide the best feedback possible, it doesn't really matter that much whether you've driven the track or not. You know, you still get a feedback of oversteer or understeer and which direction you need to go.
Absolutely. I mean, knowing that you did have brief flirtations with USF 2000 and Pro Mazda, not as if a complete rookie, but by and large having to do your first full season campaign driving alongside young David Malukas. So let's talk about the decision to come over here, Toby. Was really happy to see that you did, but looking at all that you had achieved beforehand and were working on, whether it's in the UK and Formula 3, some GT stuff that you were doing, which I always love to see young drivers getting themselves stuck into, Italian F4. I don't know if I should say a scattershot approach, but it seemed like you were a guy looking for something to latch on to. What led you to say America and Indy Lights is the thing I really want to try and use to propel myself towards a bigger future?
Well, to be fair, it was, again, like you said, a last moment call. We have had a lot of, as you said, scattered experiences, like the Italian F4 that you use as an example. And they both, Italian F4 and Indy Lights, came around in a similar sort of manner. We literally got a phone call through someone that we knew before, saying, look, there's this opportunity to come and race. Are you up for it? And obviously, being a racer, the answer is always yes. So like you said, the scattered approach kind of works in and out of favour for me. Like you said, USF and Indy Pro 2000 had given me the opportunity to race in Barber and Road America. So we had a pretty good idea of what the Road to Indy was like and what it could offer. And when we got the opportunity to come and race Indy Lights, it's the highest level of single seats that I've raced, and it was an opportunity that we couldn't really miss, knowing that, if you do well, you can get some money to put back into competing for the rest of the series. If you did win the series, the step up to IndyCar and the opportunities there were incredible. So, is something that we had to grab with both hands and really utilise. Especially as everyone's super friendly and super supportive out there as well.
Before we get into the questions that my listeners have sent in, let's last visit Toby on getting acclimated to the car. This Dallara IL-15 turbocharged 4-cylinder AER Mazda motor makes a lot of power. A big wings and slicks car, if we're talking training series at least. Again, just from the outset, observing your driving, looked like you took to it right away. So just tell us about this, upgrade in speed from things you'd been in before. Definitely feels like this car has been a really good match for you and your driving talents. Yeah,
like as you said, it is a relatively fast car. Balance of power and aero maybe isn't what I'm used to. I'm used to more aero than power, so it's kind of flipped it all on its head. Especially, the first time driving it properly at St. Petersburg, the first time I've been on a street course as well. So it was quite a challenge, but I think if you take a wise enough approach to it, instead of going in expecting things, you just put everything that to a side and just take one lap by another, and then really focus on what the car responds well to. Then it's not too tough. Like you mentioned earlier, having driven a lot of cars, I think maybe that's one of my strengths, of having to adapt between, say, GT, an Italian F4, British F3 in quite a short time. So it wasn't the most difficult processes for myself, but it wasn't easy at the same time.
So you've clearly been doing a very good job on connecting with Road to Indy fans, because I believe you have received more questions than just about anybody this year. So
that's always nice to hear.
Now, granted, they're all sent in from folks with your same last name, but regardless, I'm glad you've mobilized your family. Kidding aside, our friend Peter Nutt from Holland asked, how did you keep Rinus van Kalmthout, a.k.a. Rinus VK, in your mirrors on Sunday? And he says, despite beating his countrymen, I think you drove a great second race. Tell us about that win, man, because it was no joke. It was no gift.
No, it was a really, really tough race. If we'd have had 3 or 4 victories under our belt previously, I think there would have been a lot less pressure. We could have accepted a second, another good result. But having not won on the road to Indy before, and especially in Indy Lights, for me, there was a lot of pressure. I really, really wanted that win, and I would have probably been a little bit more aggressive than Rinus, as I've got a lot less to lose, whereas, he's still fighting for a championship. So it was about maximising every lap, staying consistent, making sure the tyres held in, not making any mistakes, and putting the car in the right places when he was trying to overtake. And again, the disappointment from our result at Gateway was probably a little bit of determination and hunger additive. So, everyone deserved this result, especially at the team. And it was just, pure determination and a smart drive rather than a drive from the heart.
Elaine Sinclair asks, Toby, what are your plans for next year? Will you be back in Indy Lights?
I would love to be able to tell them. I don't know. We are working towards coming back to Indy Lights and having a title campaign. But, whether or not that will happen is another story. But we are working very, very strongly and fondly towards coming back to Indy Lights.
Our friend Vincent1701, I love screen names on social media. Vincent1701, if he was born that year, boy, he's taking great care of himself.
Yeah, I need to know his secrets.
He says, Toby, it's been a while since your last win, so congratulations on Portland. He says, is America still the land of opportunity, even for race car drivers?
I would say so, yes. It's definitely a lot more opportunity than Europe for a, let's say, underfunded racing driver. There's a lot of friendly people with a lot of contacts that are very willing to help. So I would say, yes, it is.
Jordan Darwin, another frequent contributor here, asks something similar. Says, Toby, what was it about IndyCar and Indy Lights that made you come to the road to Indy as someone races by and not stay in the EU on the F1 ladder like most of your countrymen?
There were various reasons. Funding in Europe, I think, is a little bit more expensive and hard to come by. So it kind of puts you in a perspective of thinking long term. And I think America does a very, very good, or has a very, very structured and helpful ladder in place to help drivers progress. You know, even drivers that money isn't concerned for, there's a lot of attraction. So, you know, the opportunities to go from Indy Lights to IndyCar with the entries granted. So the numbers on the grid as well, there's always, except for Indy Lights this year, there's always a lot of talent. Not to say there isn't talent, there's just not a massive grid. But there's a lot of opportunities out there as a driver. So, you know, I think that's probably the biggest aspect.
Michael Goodyear
coming to America.
Yeah, Michael Goodyear is a great question. No, about tires. He says, Toby, in watching the Lights broadcast this year, commentator Anders Krohn has been particularly complimentary in your speed at the beginning of the races and your ability to make up spots at the start. And he says, I have to agree, it's been incredible to watch. He says, however, he often remarks that he thought the more aggressive starts you've had have then used up your tires rather quickly and hurt you towards the end of the race. Obviously, on Sunday, you held off Renus masterfully and kept pace until the checkered flag. He wonders, how difficult is it running these Indy Lights race where you don't have pit stops to get new Cooper tires and maintain peak performance throughout the entire race? So he's wondering, how hard, have you figured out exactly how hard you can push, sacrificing longevity versus tire life to get the most out of the tires for the entire race?
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy aspect. I don't think they're directly related between the aggressiveness at the start versus the pace at the end. Obviously, they are connected a little bit, but I think having come from a different approach in Europe where you have a single green flag lap and then race start, you have to be a lot more aggressive with the warm-up procedure, especially as the conditions out here are usually a lot cooler as well. So I think maybe a few years of having to deal with that and bringing the tyres up a lot quicker and more effectively helps us better prepare for the starts of the race, rather than it being a direct trade-off. And again, like we mentioned, HMD is a new outfit, so we're still learning, as am I myself. So, you know, I think a little bit of time management and a little bit of raw pace is what does hamper us in the majority of the last 5 to 10 lap phases of the races. So I don't think it's a direct trade-off between being aggressive at the start and the end, but there's definitely a little bit of a correlation.
I also love the fact that my listeners send in the most random of questions, of which
they're the fun ones.
Raymond Wong certainly wins this episode. Says, Toby, curious about Rich Energy being a sponsor, and were there any complications with the Rich Energy sponsorship after the big blow up between the brand and the Haas F1 team? He says, I also still have the unopened can of Rich Energy you gave me at COTA.
Ah, nice. Wicked. Well, it wouldn't have been an interview if they weren't mentioned, I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, you know, for me, I'd known the company way before they'd got into F1, so I've always been very much on the side of them, despite the controversy that they've sometimes had. But for me, there wasn't any complications. I was informed that all the issues that were going on in the UK were a different set of issues for the US, so they didn't conflict. So on my end, I was continuing as I would in the UK, but obviously not so much the same procedure in the UK when I was back here. But no, I think, there's not going to be many more complications. It's all going to change in the future, I'm sure. But whether or not that affects me, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Sadly, I'd love to be able to. But, we've still got the drinks, we've still got the contacts, and we're working with them to make sure that, we get back in Indy Lights for 2020 and hopefully progress into IndyCar for the future years. And if they haven't tried the drink, then I'm sure that they will pleasantly enjoy it.
Well, look at that. Future-minded and a little product insertion there. Fine job, Toby. Almost as good as the drive on Sunday. Two more questions for you. First one is from Michael Zenger, who asks, during your time in British Formula 3, AJ Foyt racing driver Matthias Laced was one of your main rivals. Did he influence your decision to compete in Indy Lights? And also he wonders, how do you rate him as a driver and his IndyCar career up to now?
Well, first of all, I'll start with how I rate Matthias.
Dreadful human
Obviously,
being, right?
Having
just the
raced
worst.
him, yeah, he's deserved to be at the back. No, I think he's a very, very talented driver. Obviously, don't know too much about AJ Foyt, but I think there's probably more struggles than people could see. He's a very fast driver. He was in British F3 and British F4 the year before, I believe, as well. So, he's always stood out to me as a very talented driver, and I think he's struggling behind the scenes for reasons that I'm unaware of. But he definitely not have some influence, but some pros coming out to the US, seeing his progression, how he did with Carlin in Indy Lights. It's definitely it's information for us to see what the progress and the rate of success you can have out in the US versus what you can do in the UK. So it's a little disappointing to see him at the back of the grid, but I'm sure he'll get things sorted and be at the front in no time, as I know he raced with Colton as well. And I wouldn't have said there's the talent difference that the results are bringing.
Yeah, no, completely agree. He's a sweetheart of a kid, but also has wicked talent as well. So
yeah, very good in my eyes.
As you well know, talent does not always get to shine through based upon team. Could be engineer. No. There's a lot of things that can contribute too.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements. It's not just driver, car, win. There's a lot more behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see. So yeah, I think he's better than his results.
Could be just the excessive aerodynamic drag from his big, bushy, curly hair. That could be another reason we should look into.
Get the razor out and shave it all off.
See. All right, let's close with a question from your countryman, Tom Boyers. Great one here, Tom. He says, I'm from the UK, have watched IndyCar for many years. He says, the only part of the TV broadcast we get over here are just the IndyCar races and qualifying. He says, I was surprised to learn last week that Indy Lights only does a handful of oval races per season. And he asks, do you think this is enough in terms of the volume of oval races training in Indy Lights to properly prepare you for graduating to IndyCar?
Oh, I think that's a really smart question that a lot of people have actually asked this year. We only do 2 ovals, I believe. Most seasons. I know we've only done 2.
Gateway, I believe.
Yeah, that's the only 2 that we'll be doing this year. And I think that's a question that's very different for each driver. I mean, the Freedom was my first oval race. Not my first time on an oval. You have to do a rookie shakedown and test before just to see whether you can really adapt well enough to race at such a serious sort of speed. But I didn't find it, or myself, too out of my depth. I mean, we came out of the race as a new team and my first time racing on an oval, having led a portion of the race. So, some drivers might struggle a little bit more than others, but I think obviously the more races and testing you can do on oval, the more beneficial it will be in the long run. But I don't think there is necessarily a lack of races, because in winter seasons you will be doing testing as well. So, for example, if Askew does a full campaign next year, I'm positive that he'll also do some oval testing in the winter. So It's, I think, down to the driver at the end of the day. You know, some still won't take to it after 2 years of racing. Some drivers might love it after the first time. So, yeah, I'll have to say it's very driver dependent.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us, Toby. Obviously, we have one more
pleasure.
weekend.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're going to be going into the season finale at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, doing your best to not just have a single win on your resume by the end of the year.
Shoulders and elbows out for Laguna, that's for sure.
Sharpened elbows. Watch out, people. Toby, congrats again on a stellar drive on Sunday. Happy for you and that breakthrough win. It was never really a question of if, just when, and hopefully the season ends to your pleasure, and also we get to have you back next year and, frankly, for a long time to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me on.
And that was Toby Sowery, and before that, his countryman, Jack Harvey. Thanks to them for spending some time, also giving us some really good stuff here. Now it is time to move on to our next episode, and that is part 1 of your Q&A, which I've broken into 2 parts because there was so much awesomeness that you sent through, plus some observations of my own, a rant or 2, just the usual stuff, a little bit more of a relaxed format. So off to that. Thank you again to all of our partners that make this show possible. Let's get moving.